Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And today we're going to talk about two movies, not just one. Back on January 14th, we lost one of the... a really great actor. One of cinema's greats. One of cinema's heavyweights, I guess you could say. Mr. Alan Rickman. So we were originally planning on doing an episode on one of Alan Rickman's most famous movies, but we couldn't decide on just one, so we decided to do both Die Hard, released in 1988, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, released in 1991. Die Hard, directed by John McTiernan, and written by Jeb Stewart and Stephen D'Souza, I believe. I don't have that up. Stephen E. D'Souza. And then Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, directed by Kevin Reynolds, written by Penn Densham and John Watson. And of course, they both star Alan Rickman. Die Hard, of course, has Bruce Willis, Bonnie Bedelia, Reginald VelJohnson, William Atherton, Paul Gleason, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves stars Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, Christian Slater, and Alan Rickman as Sheriff of Nottingham. And sometimes when we start these episodes off, we kind of, we'll do our nostalgic thing. And I was thinking about both of these movies the other day and how the first time I saw them, I'm pretty sure both of these movies, the first time I saw them was on a network television premiere where they... it's been edited for content and all that stuff. I know that's how I saw Die Hard for the first time. It was on USA or something. And I'm pretty sure that's how I saw Robin Hood for the first time. And it had been a long time since I had seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, so rewatching it was pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly. What did you think about it?
It's pretty good. I think it still kind of holds up. It's a little long. I think I have the DVD and the Blu-ray, and they're both the extended cut, so I don't really know how much longer it is than the theatrical version. But it's 2.5 hours, so it's a little bit on the long side, but I really like it. And both films actually are scored by Michael Kamen, who for Robin Hood has a very iconic score.
Oh yeah,
and Die Hard, of course, has great music as well. But not quite as iconic, I would say, maybe, perhaps.
Every time I hear the Robin Hood theme, I get chills.
Yeah.
It's one of those.
And it's funny because Morgan Creek Production Company, I guess, which I believe produced Robin Hood, ended up using the Robin Hood music for its production company logo. And I remember, I used to watch Ace Ventura all the time, and it had that Morgan Creek logo, and it has that Robin Hood music, and so for the longest time I just thought that was the Morgan Creek music.
Right.
And then of course I repopped this movie and I'm like, oh, it's from this movie type of thing.
That's interesting. It was in front of Ace Ventura?
I believe so. I know Morgan Creek was in front of Ace Ventura, and I'm almost positive that music was.
Huh. Well, I distinctly remember the music from Robin Hood.
Nice.
And I actually got to see Robin Hood in the theaters.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Which I was 92 or 91. I would have been. What month did it come out?
Let's see. It was released
June. So
June 14th.
I was 6.
Okay.
And I had actually seen. I actually had also seen Dances with Wolves in the theater.
Oh wow.
So Kevin Costner was. A primary actor in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we saw Dances with Wolves, the opening scene of that is, of course, where they're taking off the boots.
Right. They're going to do surgery. They're going to cut his leg off, I think.
Right. And it's all bloody and stuff.
Yeah.
And to me at that age, and even then in cinema, that was kind of, a shocking, gory scene.
Yeah, sure.
To see. And then Robin Hood opens up with someone getting their hand chopped off.
Yep. And
I remember those, and I don't know. I went with my dad with both of them. It was just me and him. I guess he had just heard good things about them.
Yeah.
But I just have that memory of going to go see Robin Hood in the theater and just thinking about how Kevin Costner was in all these movies and they were kind of adult movies for me.
Sure, yeah, of course. It's funny that the kind of the violence stood out to you as a kid, because that's actually, I remember seeing, like I said, I remember kind of watching this movie on TV for the first time, and really the main thing that stood out to me, like my strongest memory of watching Robin Hood for the first time, is that opening scene where the guy gets his hand cut off.
Yeah.
And I guess it was just kind of a little scary, I guess, even though you don't really see his hand get cut off. It's kind of,
Right, it's more his scream, because you hear his scream, and
and I think the guy does have the hand in his hand. The other guy,
he might. I can't remember. It's either that or it's later on when you see what they're doing,
how they're doing. Right. But yeah, somehow something about it stuck with me, and I always remember, like, whenever I would think of Robin Hood, I would be like, that's that movie where that guy gets his hand cut off.
Right.
Like, that's the part that stood out the most. Oh, and then the scene with Christian Slater getting the arrow through his hand. I remember that pretty vividly, too. I remember that part as well.
Okay. This
interesting.
Robin Hood for me was one of those movies that I watched a lot growing up. Because we not only did I see it in the theater, but I got the VHS for it.
Oh, nice.
And it's one of those ones where I watched it so many times that it kind of has that rhythm, and as in like it's a poem or a piece of music, to where it just flows. Everything about it is, you can't take it out because it's part of the film.
Right.
Which is really cool for me. So anytime I watch Robin Hood, it's got that, and I think it'll always have that, and kind of have a soft, a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's neat. I don't have that same experience because I don't, I didn't see it in the theater, and I really don't remember. I think I watched it just kind of on my own. Like, I think I stumbled upon it and was like, oh, Robin Hood. So we didn't own it. I guess my parents weren't Robin Hood fans. I don't know. But, yeah, and I didn't see Dances with Wolves until I was an adult. Like, I just recently watched Dances with Wolves for the first time within the last couple of years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll hit that one.
No, probably not.
What did you think of Dances with Wolves?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I watched the 3-hour version because the 3-hour version was the theatrical version that won Best Picture, and I wanted to watch that one because I own like the special edition, which it's 4 hours long or something. I think it's an hour longer than the normal version. And Netflix had the 3-hour version on there, so I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. So now I got to go back and watch the extended version.
Yeah. That's another one where the music just is amazing in that one.
I actually did buy the soundtrack for it. I found the soundtrack in like a used CD store a little while after seeing the movie. And
I remember the theme for that was, I was trying to think, like, I had it in my head, and it was like 10 years ago, and I was like, that song that goes like this? I'm like, what's that from? And it took me several years, and finally I showed my wife Dances with Wolves, and it started playing. I was like, that's the song I've been looking for all these years.
That's funny, because that happened to me one time with the music from Requiem for a Dream, because they had used that music for the Two Towers trailer. And remember, it was like this big orchestral version of it, of course, but it was that dun 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 dun, like kind of music, and I knew I had heard that music before, and I could not figure out what it was from. And I was doing Google searches and stuff, and back then, I didn't have as much, there wasn't as much, I guess, information available as there is now. And so I couldn't figure out what it was from. And then one day I popped in Requiem for a Dream to either show you or somebody, and that music started playing, and I was like, that's it. And so I was able to figure it out, and then I went and bought that soundtrack and everything.
It wasn't me, because we watched Requiem for a Dream for the first time together, and it was so haunting and chilling to me that I never wanted to see that movie again.
I don't think I knew I'd seen it before. So I'm pretty sure I showed it to you.
I got you.
Because I saw it when I was like 18. I watched it for the first time with the girl I was dating at the time.
Okay, well, yeah, that wasn't me.
That was not you. So I'm pretty sure I showed it to you. I think I remember like making you watch it or something like that. And yeah, it horrified you, which it should. But I think that's when I figured out what the music was from.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah. After that, you played that song a lot, and every time
once I figured out what it was from, I was
Right.
like, I love this music so much.
Yeah, I guess that matches up with what you were thinking. So anyway, yeah. Whenever you play it, I just have these horrific images, and I would just feel this dread and depression. And I finally watched it again one day because I wanted to show Jordan, and it wasn't near as bad as I remembered.
Right.
But man, yeah. If you haven't seen Requiem for a Dream,
it's a fantastic movie. It's really well made, but it is a hard movie to watch.
Yeah.
Especially the first time. Like you said, maybe it's a little easier the second time you watch it because you know what's coming and everything.
Right.
But that first time, yeah, it's a tough movie to watch, but it's very, very good.
Yeah. If you want to guarantee that you will never have a drug issue, watch that movie because it will. It's a
great anti-drug PSA, basically. So anyway, back to Die Hard and Robin Hood. Die Hard was I don't have a strong recollection of seeing Die Hard for the first time. I'm pretty sure I saw it on TV, but even then, I feel like I'd either seen clips of it before or something. Like it was just one of those movies where I don't really remember seeing it for the first time and being blown away by it. I just feel like I remember seeing it and being like, "Yep, that's Die Hard," type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wish that I could have, seen that in the theater, but I would have only been 5 years old, and so I don't think that would have worked out too well.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember either. I've actually only seen Die Hard probably 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Which, I know Die Hard is considered a major
one of the best
classic.
Action movies of all time.
Yeah. And I can see it.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the attachment to it that most people do.
Sure.
But I definitely recognize it as an amazing movie.
Yeah. It's a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people watch it for Christmas.
For some people to watch it around Christmas time, yeah.
And I can't, I can't really connect with that, but
sure.
But I can see that too, I guess.
I wonder if I watched all 3 of them together originally or something, because I have this really kind of, I would say, strong love for the trilogy. Like, not including Live Free or Die Hard and A Good Day to Die Hard, which both are pretty bad. But the first 3, because Denise, my fiance, she had not seen all of Die Hard when I decided to sit down and watch it, so I made her watch the first one. And then as soon as we got done with the first one, I popped in the second one and we watched the second one. And as soon as that one was done, I think we started the third one, but at that point it was kind of getting kind of late. But I just love like all 3 of those movies together as a whole.
Mm-hmm. I've actually not seen any of the other Die Hard movies.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Well, to give you a little, I bet you. Okay, so in my opinion, Die Hard 1 is obviously the best, and then it would go Die Hard 3, then Die Hard 2. And then Die Hard 4, and then Die Hard 5. 5 is easily the worst. But I don't know. Die Hard 2, I used to think was before the 4th and 5th one came out. Used to be the least good Die Hard movie to me, and now it's like one that I actually really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot of fun. It's not nearly as good as the first movie, but it's still, I don't know. It's still a fun action movie, and I like it a lot. And then the third one, same with the third one. The third one, I can understand why. Like, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about how one of the problems he has with Die Hard 2 is that in Die Hard 1, it takes place all in the Nakatomi building. And in Die Hard 2, for the first, I would say, like, hour or so, maybe even more, it all takes place within this airport. And then at some point, he ends up leaving the airport. And then the friend that I was talking to said that's when Die Hard 2 starts falling apart for him. Because he feels like that's when it starts to not feel like a Die Hard movie. Because I guess he thinks Die Hard movies should all take place within one location over the span of one night, probably.
Gotcha.
And then if you watch Die Hard 3, that movie takes place all over New York. It's like part of the movies that they have to keep running from location to location.
Right.
And yet it really feels like a Die Hard movie. So, I don't really have a problem with it, but yeah, I'd be curious to hear what you think of those movies. You should at least check out, if you can, if they ever become available for, on streaming or anything, you should definitely check out Die Hard 2 and 3.
Oh, I'm excited to. And now that we've, made this a semi-podcast episode for Die Hard, we might have to do, maybe we could do a 2/ with
3?
a Vengeance episode or something.
And then Die Hard 4 and 5.
I kind of get the thing about it taking place in one
location,
because there's a video game that I'm a big fan of called Metal Gear Solid. And the original game took place pretty much on this one base. And indoors. Like, you were always indoors. And the second one was pretty much like that. It was. And then the third one was outdoors, like in open. It wasn't open world, but it was outdoors, and you didn't have walls and rooms that you'd go into and stuff. And I felt like once that it went that way, it started going away from the style that I felt like Metal Gear was.
Sure.
But a lot of people consider those games to be, some of the best. And but I don't know. I haven't played all the way through it, but I get how you can have that because it never really did that. It was just one game that really did that. And that's
like Die Hard. It's only really one movie where he's in one location, right?
But for me, I was like, well, Metal Gear Solid is this. Anyway, that was my comparison.
No, yeah, I totally understand that for sure. So yeah. Well, I guess right off the bat, let's talk a little bit about Alan Rickman.
Yeah,
the late great Alan Rickman.
That's why we're doing played these movies.
Hans Gruber, probably one of the most well-known movie villains from action movies of the last 30 years. And then, of course, the Sheriff of Nottingham, one of the most famous villains of all time, I guess you could say, really, just from Robin Hood lore, I suppose.
Throughout history.
Yeah.
And lore.
I had actually read somewhere that he didn't want to play Sheriff of Nottingham, and then Kevin Reynolds, I guess, told him that he could play it however he wanted to, or something like that, and that kind of enticed him to finally take on the role. But originally, I guess, had turned it down or something, which would have been interesting to see, who, because to me, he's perfect as Sheriff of Nottingham, especially in this movie, the way it's done and everything. And so I can't imagine somebody else playing that character.
Yeah, I agree.
Alan Rickman he made a career out of playing, and I'm really only counting these two movies and a couple others, but I was going to say he kind of made a career out of playing villains, and he was just really good at playing a charismatic, three-dimensional villain character.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this, and I got to say spoiler alert. I would imagine most people know this by now, but it deals with Harry Potter. And giving you a few minutes or seconds. Just seconds. Just a few seconds only. Okay. So that makes me think, or not think, it's pretty evident that that's why they cast him as Snape.
Sure.
But later on, it turns out that he was not the villain.
Sure.
That was the spoiler.
Yes, that was.
But yeah,
well, I think when they first cast him, I guess if you're talking about the first film, the first Harry Potter, and yes, well, this gets a little spoilerish, I suppose. You do think he's the villain,
right,
throughout the whole first movie, and then of course at the end you realize he's not the villain, but he still is kind of this character who may or may not really like Harry Potter. And I think and then of course as the movies progress, and they had no idea when they started making the movies because the books hadn't been finished yet.
Right.
They had no idea just how important his character was and how multi-layered, I guess you could say his character was. And thank goodness they cast Alan Rickman, because he, is that type of actor who can bring all that to that character and make it completely believable.
Yeah.
He can be somebody who has an issue with this kid, but also is, spoiler alert, very much willing to protect him, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I would even say that even more so than Gruber and the sheriff, that Snape. I can't see anyone else playing Snape.
No, I can't either.
I think that would be the most important role that out of those three that he would be required to play.
And that's, a lot of people, when he passed away, that's a lot of people were saying, R.I.P. Severus Snape and stuff like that. And I think some of the older people on the internet were kind of like a little upset that they, that he was like, no, not Severus Snape, Hans Gruber, Sheriff of Nottingham. But really, he played Severus Snape for, the first movie came out in 2001, I think, something like that. And the last one came out in 2012 or something, 2011, 2012. So he was playing Severus Snape for over 10 years.
Right.
So there's this whole
movies.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's kids who pretty much grew up on those movies. And so I completely understand why most people would see him as Snape first, perhaps, and then these other characters later.
Yeah, I'd say Harry Potter is the next closest thing to Star Wars we've gotten.
Sure.
As far as a fan base goes. And so technically, and not to mention, there's only been, never mind, there's been 7 Star Wars movies now, but forgetting the prequels and the new one, there's 3 that have really lived for the past, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so I think Alan Rickman playing Snape is like Harrison Ford playing Han Solo at this point.
And it's, I hope they never really... I'm assuming they eventually will, but I can't imagine it happening for many, many years. But, if they ever do decide to reboot the Harry Potter franchise and just start over, it would be very curious to see who plays Snape. And I think out of all of the characters in Harry Potter, Snape is the one that, you will not be able to help but compare it to Alan Rickman's performance.
Right.
With a new Harry and a new Ron and a new Hermione and stuff, you could be like, well, you could either see them kind of by themselves. You might compare them a little bit to Mark Radcliffe, but I bet you whoever plays Snape, you'd be like, well, he's no Alan Rickman. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Alan Rickman was perfect for Severus Snape. So. Yeah,
and he made it his.
Yeah, of course.
So we had no idea, except from the books, what Severus Snape was.
Sure.
And once Alan Rickman came on, and you got to see Snape on the screen, and actually there and watch his expressions and his movements, that became Snape.
Mm-hmm.
And
you even, like, for the books that came out after the first couple of movies came out, I don't know about you, but every time I read Severus Snape in the book, I couldn't help but, hear it in Alan Rickman's voice. He had, with that slow kind of talking.
Right. And I did that with, all the characters, Daniel Radcliffe and all.
What's funny is with Dumbledore, I usually kind of heard it in Richard Harris's voice, the original Dumbledore, rather than Michael Gambon.
Yep.
Or
even after
Michael
Gambon did, how many? 6?
Yeah, he did a lot more.
6 movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
you
Richard
still
Harris
kind of read it
2.
in Richard Harris's voice, yeah.
Yeah, I preferred Richard Harris, not discounting Michael Gambon at all.
Michael Gambon was great.
Exactly. But Richard Harris, first of all, I don't want to talk about Harry Potter anymore.
I know you want to do episodes on Harry Potter, so I guess we'll save this for another time. But
let's get back to Robin Hood and Die Hard.
Sure.
So you want to we were talking about Die Hard. Do you want to kind of bounce back between them?
Yeah, well, Die Hard, I'm trying to, I obviously want to focus on Alan Rickman since this is kind of our Alan Rickman episode. But at the same time, Die Hard is, it's one of my favorite action movies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love just about every second of this film. And I love everything down to the music, the actors. Obviously, it was Bruce Willis's, star-making role.
Right. What had he done before this?
He had done a couple of movies. He'd done a movie called Blind Date, and I don't think he had done Hudson Hawk yet. But he had a TV show called Moonlighting. That was pretty much what got him the movie, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Hudson Hawk came out in 91.
Yeah. So not much. He had done Moonlighting and then did Die Hard, and Die Hard pretty much made him a movie star. And then I think he did Hudson Hawk, and then he did Die Hard. No, Die Hard 2 was in 90, I think, so.
Yeah.
He did Die Hard 2 and then Hudson Hawk. And so I guess he might have still been working on Moonlighting at the time.
That's crazy that this was really one of his
first movies.
Yeah, because, he does an outstanding job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, people saw him, because Moonlighting had more of a comedy aspect to it. And so I think, from what I remember, I don't think certain producers wanted Bruce Willis to be John McClane because they didn't see him as an action star. They saw him more as a comedy star.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he brings a little bit of comedy to the role, obviously. Yeah, come out to the coast. We'll have a few laughs. Right. But, he obviously proved himself as an action star as well.
One of my favorite parts in this movie, and I didn't pick up on it until this viewing, was when Reginald Val Johnson gets in the car and the body lands on his hood, and his reaction is so priceless. He puts it in reverse and just starts driving backwards.
Just screaming into his radio.
Screaming, and he just keeps driving and driving and driving until he drives off a small cliff or overhang.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know what you would call that, but a little kind of cliff.
That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
That one's great. And I love Bruce Willis's line right there too. He throws the body out and he starts freaking out and he goes, "Welcome to the party, pal." So it's just, it's a perfect moment in that movie. And then of course Reginald Val Johnson's very good. He went on to play Carl Winslow in Family Matters, of course, and he's great.
He's also in Ghostbusters as a cop.
Right, yeah, that's true. I actually like to think that he moved from L.A. to... Doesn't Family Matters take place in Chicago, I think?
I don't remember.
I think it does.
I know that Bill Cosby did.
I thought Bill Cosby took place in New York.
I thought Bill Cosby was Chicago. I could be wrong.
Anyway, I like to think that he retired from the LAPD and went to become a cop in Chicago or wherever Family Matters takes place, and had his family and everything. And it's a spin-off of Die Hard.
Right. And same with Ghostbusters. He's in New York. He was there visiting John McClane.
That's right. Yeah. That speaking of that actor, William Atherton, I think he still works, but I haven't really seen him in much as of late. And I always think of, whenever I, see his character in this movie, I always think of his character in Ghostbusters. And kind of vice versa, because they're practically the same character. They're this I know it all, kind of smarmy, kind of just snake-like character, and he plays it really well in both movies.
That's right, yeah. It is pretty much the same character, and I remember you telling me that I think it was actually, we mentioned it in the Ghostbusters podcast, that he gets a lot of hate from people because of his role from Ghostbusters and probably Die Hard also. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he was he wasn't terrible in this. That was the other thing that I really liked in this. Did you get that?
Yeah. After he gets punched in the face. That's one of the problems with Die Hard 2, I would say, is he's very coincidentally shows up in the second one as well.
Gotcha.
But he's just kind of he's the news reporter in this one, and he's very pushy. his boss doesn't even like him. He's like kind of almost blackmailing his boss. I forget what he says exactly, but his boss does not want to give him a truck and have him go out and get the report in the Nakatomi Plaza, and he's threatening him in certain ways. I kind of forget exactly, but so then it's kind of the same thing in Ghostbusters where he's like making him shut down the reactor thing. It's been a while since I've seen Ghostbusters. Storage facility, and so he's just very good at playing kind of jerks, I guess.
Right.
Alan Rickman's good at playing charismatic villains, and William Atherton's good at playing jerks. Oh, you know what else he's in? He's in Biodome, and of course he plays a very pretentious scientist in Biodome as well. He ends up kind of being the villain. But
I haven't seen that one.
That one, you're not missing out a whole lot with Biodome. I feel like if you didn't see Biodome when you were 13 years old, you're probably not going to appreciate it now.
Right. And it probably had to watch it in the 90s as well.
Yes, exactly.
Then again, I don't know. I mean, you might be able to go back and watch it as kind of a 90s nostalgic movie.
Well, I haven't seen it in years, but I could probably pop it in right now and watch it and semi-enjoy it because I remember enjoying it as a kid.
Right.
But if you haven't seen it, I don't know if you could you might be able to pop it in and just enjoy the 90s aspect of it. But I think overall you'd be like, man, this movie's dumb,
Right.
Because it's dumb. But, whatever. It's Pauly Shore, so I don't know, what do you expect?
Right. William Atherton was also in The Last Samurai?
Yeah, he was. I think I do remember that. Man, it's been a while since I've seen that movie too, but I think he's, I can't remember if he's the guy that kind of recruits Tom Cruise's character to work with the Japanese army.
That's what I'm thinking.
I
Winchester
think so.
Rep?
Winchester Rep. Maybe he's like selling rifles or something.
Oh, yeah, I think that was, yeah, that's right. That's what it was at the beginning of the movie. But the guy that you're talking about kind of plays the character that William Atherton would get cast to play. So.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
Another great actor in Die Hard is the late Paul Gleason. He passed away a few years ago as well. Most notably known for this movie, of course, and Breakfast Club. I love him in The Breakfast Club as the principal. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. And so
right.
I think he's great in this movie as kind of the police captain who thinks he's in charge but really does not know what he's doing type of thing,
Right.
So,
and I thought I never really picked up on. It had been a long time since I'd seen this movie. I'm guessing.
Did you see Die Hard?
Yeah, I'm guessing. Maybe I was in college last time I saw it.
Okay, wow.
So probably like 10 years ago.
Right.
And I didn't remember a lot of the plot as far as like the strategy.
What the villains were after and things like that.
Yeah. So I thought that was really pretty brilliant about how they did the FBI coming in. And that's exactly...
Agent Johnson and Agent Johnson.
Right, and that's exactly what they wanted. They're like, oh, you talking about a miracle moment. The FBI's coming. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And how they used that. Because, before, they let the audience think, oh, the FBI's getting involved. Now, we've got the heroes coming and everything's...
Right.
But then they cut to the bad guys, and they're like, oh, this couldn't have worked out any better.
Mm-hmm.
And they shut down the power.
And I think Alan Rickman even says at one point when the police first show up, he's like, we're waiting for the FBI.
Gotcha.
And so, but you don't know why. You're like, why would you be waiting for why? And so I think maybe, again, it's one of those movies where I've seen it a lot and I don't recall having seen it for the first time, but I wonder if maybe the first time you see it, you're thinking maybe the FBI is actually in on it. Because those guys show up and they're kind of rude to the police. They're kind of, sketchy, you could say, maybe a little bit. Mm. And that one FBI agent has played villains and stuff in the past. He was a Bond villain in one of the Timothy Dalton movies. So I could see where you'd maybe think, oh, those FBI guys are in on it. You know what I mean? But then you find out that they're not.
Right. But it's when they show up, later on in the movie, when they actually show up, and Alan Rickman makes that statement about it's his like crew seems like they're like wigging out that the FBI is showing up, and then Alan Rickman's like, no,
it's clear that
this actually is perfect.
Right?
Maybe he didn't tell them like what his plan was, but
I don't think he did. I think he kept that pretty close to the chest. I think he had an idea in mind, because I remember the guy that was played by I'm going to look him up real quick, Clarence Gilliard Jr., Theo. He's the guy that's trying to crack the safe, and he keeps telling him, he's like, you're going to need a miracle to get through that last lock or whatever. And Alan Rickman is like, trust me, it'll be fine. And so I don't think he's given him parts of the plan, but he hasn't given him everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, he tells them, as you know, at the same time he's telling the audience that the FBI, one of the protocols, I guess, of FBI dealing with these situations is to cut the power, which will then allow them to get into that last part of the safe that they need to get into.
Yeah.
And so it's like they really did need the FBI to show up in order to get the money that they wanted to get.
Right. Brilliant storytelling, brilliant writing.
Yeah, I really. It's based on a novel by a guy named Roderick Thorpe, and the novel, I forget what it's called. It's not called Die Hard. It's called like Never Look Back or something like that. You know, something kind of somewhat generic. And it's the guy, and I think the character's name isn't John McClane. It's like Joe Leland or something. But I'm curious how much is straight from the book and how much was invented for the film.
Mm-hmm.
I found the book a while back at like a used bookstore. I got it for like $1 or something. So I do plan on reading it at some point and kind of seeing what's different. I imagine because I love the movie so much that it's going to be one of those, I like the movie better than the book, which is very rare. But
yeah,
in this instance, I don't see how I could like the book any more than I already do love the movie. So
right. Let's move back to Robin Hood a little bit.
Sure.
How did you feel? How did it stand up to you since, I mean, how long had it been since you had seen it?
It had been a while. It had been, I want to say it had been over 10 years since I had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of stuff I didn't really remember. I forgot about like that witch character, honestly. I remembered as soon as I saw her, but
right.
But I had kind of completely forgotten about her character. And that was, I think, my biggest beef with the movie. I didn't mind her character necessarily, but I wasn't a huge fan of some of the camera work that was involved whenever she was on screen, especially in the later half of the movie.
Right.
It was like they shot like really close up on her with a wide angle lens, so it kind of had this weird,
big exactly.
face distortion kind of thing going on, and that I just thought was a little hokey. But overall, I love the movie. I think Kevin Costner. It doesn't bother me, obviously, that Kevin Costner doesn't have an accent. I'd read two things online. I don't know which one is true. I read that he wanted to do the accent, but the director wouldn't let him. And I also read that he tried to do the accent, and it was terrible, and they decided for him to not do the accent. And so I kind of feel like that was probably the case. But
yeah.
Especially since Christian Slater's doing an accent and stuff like that. So I feel like Kevin Costner probably came out and did some horrible accent, and they were like, you know what? Maybe let's not do the accent.
Right. Morgan Freeman's doing an accent.
Yeah, he's got an accent. Right.
Not English, but
right. Morgan Freeman's great in this movie too. I like him a lot. I think he was perfectly cast as Azim.
This is probably my favorite Morgan Freeman role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah, I don't hold Morgan Freeman up as high as most people do.
Uh-huh.
But this one, he's pretty outstanding in.
He's quite good in it. I would give you that. I mean, he's, like I said, he's pretty much perfectly cast. He brings some good humor to the role. I love the scene. It's fairly early in the movie when they finally get back to. They're pretty close to. I think they're actually on his land. Which when that boy is being chased by the it's the guy of Gisborne and his men, and Robin Hood starts fighting him, and he's yelling for Azim, and Azim is just up at the top of the hill praying. He's like doesn't care at all, even though he has this sworn oath to to
Azim, it's time to
life.
fulfill that oath.
Right, to save his life. Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. So yeah, I mean, I like this movie quite a bit. I love the fight scene between Little John and Robin Hood when they first meet. His name is John Little, and they have the fight in the water and everything.
Yeah, there was some good writing with this too. Some clever, snarky comments coming from certain characters, and I just the way that they portrayed the time period was well done. The costume design, and this was really the first time that I haven't seen any other Robin Hood movies. Mm-hmm. I haven't even seen the Russell Crowe one.
Right.
But I'm assuming that the other ones before this were nothing like this, and this was kind of the more modern take that had ever been done with Robin Hood.
I don't know for sure, but that to me sounds correct. I know the most popular Robin Hood movie before this one was Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, I think, which was the movie with Errol Flynn, which I believe was like from the 30s or 40s. So I'm sure there had been a Robin Hood adaptation in between this one and The Adventures of Robin Hood, but I don't know if they were that popular or if they did that well.
Right.
And I think this movie was a hit, and in my opinion, I haven't seen The Adventures of Robin Hood, but I know that one is, watching it today probably would feel a little cheesy. He's probably got the
the hat with the
feather in it and stuff, in the tights. But as far as I know, that's a pretty good movie. But like I said, I haven't seen it, and then I haven't seen the Russell Crowe Robin Hood either, and I've heard bad things about that.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I haven't seen it.
Right. I think this is probably, aside from maybe the Disney Robin Hood, this is probably the best Robin Hood adaptation that's out there, and the only reason I said the Disney one is because that's probably the only other Robin Hood movie I've seen.
Well, I love the Disney adaptation,
and I did too.
myself.
I liked it a lot as a kid, but obviously, I would go with this one now.
Right. This one takes the hat off, takes the feather off, and makes him a person that if you were like if Robin Hood had been a real guy, which there's speculation whether he was or not,
right.
But if he had been, this is a much more believable version.
Sure.
And I really liked what they did with it. I agree about the witch lady.
Mm-hmm.
She was Mortiana, as it was her name.
Yeah.
She was kind of weird. I thought it was funny though that, and I didn't pick up on this until recently. I don't think it was this past viewing, but maybe the one before that. I had watched it maybe 2 or 3 years ago, prior to this past viewing. That she had been spying on him through those holes,
right.
Which was the whole reason why she was able to predict what was going on and
right.
and stuff.
She didn't really have any powers or anything.
Right, and his reaction to finding that out is pretty funny. Alan Rickman, the way that he made this character, and more props to him again. Comical but menacing.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
opening, the introduction of his character was magnificent. Where Robin Hood, Robin of Locksley, his father goes out, and the castle's surrounded by the horsemen with the masks.
Mm-hmm.
Very terrifying scene. And then Alan Rickman takes off his mask. Join us, or die. I love that introduction, and his other line, I'm going to cut out your heart with a spoon.
Yeah. And then I love how
his cousin,
he's like, why a spoon? He has to explain it to him. That was one of my favorite Alan Rickman moments, because it's both scary and funny, and I think Alan Rickman does a great job of blending the two, is when he goes down, and I don't remember if he's just in a bad mood or whatever, but he goes down to the dungeon, and he asks the guy, he goes, torture or death? And the guy says, death, and he goes, torture. And then he goes over to the next guy and he goes, torture or death? And the guy goes, torture? And he goes, all right. Like, he's just like, he, was going to torture everybody anyway. And so I thought that was a great moment.
Yeah. And he did a really good job of playing the in a bad mood sheriff. And I mean, he technically was always in a bad mood.
Sure. I mean, Robin was always messing up his plans.
Right. But he also had the I'm acting for, Maid Marian and the people of Nottingham, trying to be this good guy, and he did a really good job with that too. Mm-hmm.
And I also like how, and it's a weird kind of thing to give to the character. You'd think this character would just not care about anything. He's, so willing to torture and kill people and steal from everyone, and, he puts himself first, at all costs, pretty much. And so it's interesting that when he refuses to go to bed with Maid Marian until they're married. And he's like, I just want one thing in my life that's pure. And so I thought that was an interesting kind of character trait that, like, just he's like, I will break every rule, but this rule I'm going to keep just because there has to be some sort of, something done right in my life.
That reminds me of another line that he had in it when he was doing one of the rituals, and he turns to Mortiana and is like, are you sure my parents asked you to bring me up this way?
It's a good role for Alan Rickman. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, he made that character, and I don't think the movie would have been half as good.
Right.
Had he not been the Sheriff of Nottingham.
I think he definitely brought a lot to it, for sure. In Die Hard, before we kind of... I just wanted to talk about, I guess, his accent in Die Hard. Because for the longest time, I always thought he was just doing his normal British accent. And then watching it this time, I realized that he does kind of have a little bit of that German accent in it. And it's also one of the few times that I can think of, anyway, where Alan Rickman does an American accent when he's up on the roof and he gets caught by John McClane. And it's a pretty genius move on Hans Gruber's part to all of a sudden pretend to be a hostage that made his way up to the roof to try to find help. And so he puts on this American accent and he's like, no, don't shoot me.
Right.
I think it's a good American accent, but there's still a little bit of Alan Rickman in it. And it's always made me wonder if John McClane would know in real life. He does question him on his name, and he gets it says his name is Robert Clay, I think, and he sees the name on the list on the wall next to him, and he's like, okay, this guy's telling the truth. But he does have a little bit of that Alan Rickman raspiness, I think, to it, even in his American accent. I didn't pick up
on that.
Really?
I thought his accent was pretty perfect, and especially, back then, it would have been harder to. What I want to say is maybe because Alan Rickman's voice is so recognizable now.
Sure.
That when you don't hear Alan Rickman's voice, it's like, that's not Alan Rickman. Like, he's doing a really good accent. So maybe that's why.
Right.
But I didn't hear it because his voice is super recognizable.
Right. And so he did, like I said, it is a good American accent, but I just feel like maybe it's just because I've watched it so many times.
Right.
I just kind of feel like there is that little hint of Rickman in it. But,
gotcha.
But no, still a great, scene where he pretty much tricks, or does he, John McClane, because he still gives him a gun that's not loaded. So,
right.
He probably would have done that to anybody, perhaps.
Speaking of his voice, he did the voice of the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland.
That's right.
Tim Burton's version. And they are coming out with a sequel, I think it's this year. I guess it would have to be. Anyway, Alan Rickman reprises his role as the caterpillar. It's called, Through the Looking Glass. It's not directed by Tim Burton, surprisingly.
Oh, it's not?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I did not know that.
But I guess that'll be his last movie performance.
I think you might be right. It looks. I'm on his IMDb right now, and it looks like that would probably be his last one, unless he, has filmed a movie that is not on this list yet.
Right.
That comes out sometime.
But yeah, I looked that up. Upon the announcement of his passing, and saw that they had completed the movie, so it is done, which means that they're not going to be missing any lines for him or anything. So I am definitely I liked the Alice in Wonderland Tim Burton's version. I don't know how you felt about it. I know a lot of people were apparently mixed. It seems like most people I bring it up to enjoyed it.
I would say I was a little mixed on it. I honestly haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm. Did you see it in 3D? Because I remember they were pushing that.
I don't think so. I think I saw it in regular 2D. But I do, he was good, obviously, as the Caterpillar. And Johnny Depp, is always kind of fun to watch, even as the goofy Mad Hatter. I think my issue with Alice in Wonderland overall, it wasn't necessarily the movie. I think the movie was fine. I think it's just I would like to see Tim Burton. It's kind of how I feel about a lot of movies nowadays. It's just I would like to see, more practical sets and less complete CGI sets and things like that. And I know a lot of that movie was done on green screen, and you just think about Tim Burton's kind of earlier films, Edward Scissorhands and things like that.
Right.
And you just I kind of wish that Tim Burton would kind of go back to doing stuff like that.
And we're never going to get
I know
again.
Especially with Tim Burton, because Tim Burton is kind of similar to George Lucas, I would say, in this way, is that like his crazy imagination can be realized a lot better through computer imagery than it could be in a practical set or a practical effect. And so, he can accomplish a lot more of the craziness that's probably in his mind through computers than otherwise. And so, like you said, we're probably never going to go. I mean, he did Big Eyes recently, which was a kind of a nice little refreshing Tim Burton film that wasn't.
Big Eyes?
Yeah, it was the story of Margaret Keane, I believe is her name. She was an artist. It was more of a biopic. It really didn't. I mean, honestly, if you had watched it and didn't know it was directed by Tim Burton, I doubt you would have guessed that Tim Burton was the director.
Mm-hmm.
It was very kind of just a more straightforward kind of movie. Good acting and everything, but didn't really have Tim Burton's kind of touch to it. At least in my opinion, and I haven't seen that one since I saw it in the theater either. But no, I think I'll probably go see Alice Through the Looking Glass. I don't know. It depends maybe on the reviews, but. I did want to, before we kind of wrap up everything, I did want to talk about just a couple of, we're talking about his voice and how iconic kind of his voice is. And one of the roles that I love Alan Rickman in is Dogma, where he plays an angel named Metatron, I think is the name.
Yep.
And which is essentially, in the movie, is essentially the voice of God. And so they talk about how God, if you were to actually hear God speak, the power behind God's voice would actually probably kill you. So they send Metatron down to speak as the voice of God. And so he's pretty funny in that movie. I think he's great in it. And then one of the other movies that I can't not mention, and I'm hoping we actually do an episode on it one day, is Galaxy Quest, which is basically a Star Trek spoof, and he's like a Klingon, essentially, in that movie.
Right.
And he's just so done with the Galaxy Quest franchise. He does not want to have anything to do with it. And he's great in that movie as well. So
I've only seen like a third of that movie.
Really? Especially now that you're a Star Trek fan, like since you kind of, you and I both recently kind of got into Star Trek within the last, 10 years or so. You should totally rewatch it. Now, I think it's on Netflix because I think you will appreciate it so much more. And then one final movie, I just realized I just saw it here. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh,
he was the voice of Marvin, the paranoid android. And it's perfect. It's perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and his lines in that, it's just, Alan Rickman was an icon.
Yep.
And I was really shocked that he was not knighted.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised by that too.
Because, I mean, you've got, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, they've all been knighted. How is Alan Rickman not knighted? It just doesn't make much sense, but...
Maybe they thought they had a little more time, He died,
That's right, he kept it... It was...
Young.
He kept it a secret.
Yeah, I mean, it was a shock to me, obviously. I didn't know that he had cancer until the news of his death. So
right.
I don't know if it was... I don't think it was public knowledge, as far as I know.
No, I think I read that he was keeping it private, and for like a day or two... It's probably a day. You couldn't find out what he died from. Like it was, I think it said cancer, but it wasn't like, and it didn't say what kind. And if it had been, public knowledge, I think it would have been there from the moment he passed. But I do think I remember him reading that he had kept it, personal and among family, that he was going through that. So, and you go back and look at some of the pictures that he took, within the past couple of years, and he's on set or, at an event, and he's smiling, and he seems like it seemed like he was a very down to earth, good guy. So,
yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Sorry to his family, and he will be missed in the cinema world, definitely.
Absolutely. Like we said at the beginning, he was one of the greats, and so yeah, I was very shocked and saddened to hear that he passed away, and just sad to sad for his family, obviously, of course, and then just in a more selfish way, sad to think that there's not going to be any more Alan Rickman movies for us to enjoy.
Exactly.
So, well, we'd obviously love to hear what you think about Alan Rickman. We only touched on a couple of movies of his, but he had many, many others, from Sweeney Todd to Quigley Down Under to Love Actually. So please let us know what you think, what your favorite Alan Rickman movie is, and what you thought of his performances. You can comment on cinemaheroes.com, or you can throw us a line on Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM podcast. You can throw us a line on Twitter @CinemaHeroes. I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading.